Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining. My name is Matt Bassam. I'm a junior consultant at Turner and Townsend. We're joined today by Claire Brown, who's a senior consultant from Turner and Townsend. This is a retrofit information support and expertise event, which is fully funded by the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero, which is delivered by Turner and Townsend. Thank you again for joining, and I'll now hand over to Claire Brown to start today's presentation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction, and thank you for everyone who's joining us today. Always a pleasure to deliver these sessions. So today we are looking at engaging offline residents, tenants, owner-occupiers, whoever that might be, and how this has a really important part to play in how we develop whatever that retrofit project might be. So this might be a whole estate, it might be an owner-occupier doing their individual property, and then everything in between. So we're going to be looking at a whole range of different things and why that's important, really under the banner of kind of resident engagement. And again, that is whether it's one person doing that or whether it's a whole community that needs to be engaged for the retrofit project. As always, we like to kind of start off with kind of setting the scene in terms of what we're doing. So in terms of our agenda for today, we're going to be looking at kind of what is that digital divide. So when we talk about online, offline, digital, what are we talking about? Looking at why and how that links into retrofit, looking at some of the solutions we can have, very keen on exploring some of those different options. And at the end, if people would like to share some examples of projects that have worked for them, I'm always happy to receive those. And then to think about what's next. So we're thinking about that piece, particularly around that inclusivity. We're wanting everyone to be involved with retrofit, to be part of that journey to improving their homes and having a change of way that they can look after themselves. So if we start with the definition, digital poverty is really thinking about that availability of being able to get online. And when we're talking about online, what we are thinking about is utilising some sort of device to access the internet, to access portals, services. This can be around travel, it can be around accessing support, a whole range of different things. So this definition is taken from the Digital Poverty Alliance. And when we're thinking about digital poverty, we're thinking about people who don't have access to that, who don't have a ability to enable themselves to utilize that online world fully, which will benefit them in their everyday lives. When we're talking about it in terms of retrofit, and like fuel or energy poverty, the ability to connect digitally is a challenge for many people and many residents right now. That definition can be divided into further details, and this is where we're going to explore some more of those details. There'll be a number of elements, and different kind of parts will relate to you individually, will relate to projects you're involved with, those partners that you are involved with, those contractors, and a whole range of everyone in between who's involved in the retrofit journey. So the Digital Poverty Alliance have identified 5 key determinants of what being in digital poverty really means. So these are outlined on the slide in front of you. So we've got devices. Those are kind of elements to enable people to get to that. There's the ability to access and connect. So if there is, say, Wi-Fi in the home. Then there's the support and participation. So as well as being able to access, it's about how people can actually do that and what elements are involved there. That motivation to be online and capability. So the next couple of slides, we'll have a look at what these mean individually. So if we start with devices, 1 in 5 children who have been homeschooled in 2021, so that was during the COVID-19 pandemic, they did not have access to an appropriate device. We also know that there is a widening gap between those who live in digital comfort and those who will face that digital disadvantage. Digital comfort, like thermal comfort, relates to your ability to navigate that digital world, recognizing importantly that different people will have different levels of comfort. And this, of course, is absolutely part of that challenge. So when we're thinking about numbers of households, we can see a number up here of 1.7 million are offline. That's including all tenures, so private, public, social housing, all of the tenures that we have in the UK. So understanding that and understanding how that links into retrofit is going to be really important for making progress. The next section we're going to have a look at is around capability. So when we think about this, what we're thinking about is the ability for someone to utilize that system. So use a computer, use a smartphone, access a laptop, even if it's not theirs, but say at a library. That divide is really massive. So we know from research, and again, this is all from the Digital Poverty Alliance, that 11 million people lack those what are deemed everyday digital skills, which is a massive, massive challenge when we're kind of thinking about it. When we look at it in terms of the workforce, so if you are in construction, you're working with a social landlord, whatever your role might be, in whatever capacity, it's also noted that 36% of that workforce also can lack that essential digital skills for work. So we have this massive challenge that we are presented with. And what we notice from the research is that there is a direct correlation. We see that actually it has an impact on the income that people can receive in terms of the jobs that they can access, the work that they can get involved with. We also want to highlight the link to online safety. So being safe online is really important in this journey. I'm a big fan of kind of looking at research and really kind of understanding what kind of comes through. This is taken from the Office of National Statistics. And what we see here on this graph is it's notable that tenants without internet access are less likely than the general population to say that they don't need it. The clear implication here is that tenants who don't have internet access are more than likely than the average to be missing out for some external reason rather than an active choice. So some of those reasons that we can pull forward are around kind of lack of skills, potentially lack of funds, as well as wider EDI elements. So disability is also something that is highlighted. What we find as well is actually that this difference can be broken down further in terms of some of the information that is presented here. So if we have a look, 5 times as many tenants say they don't use the internet because of a disability as opposed to the general population. And we have this element of cost in there. So when we're thinking about resident engagement, when we're thinking about joining up our thinking, when we're thinking about what can we do as an individual owner-occupier, we've got to be thinking about how is this going to potentially impact the ability to do this retrofit project. Moving on to motivation, 69% of those without home internet said nothing would make them go online next year, which is quite a staggering statistic and actually surprised me when we were putting these slides together. 47% have stated that they've got no interest in going online as they've got no use for the internet. It's an important point, and this is the last point on this slide, is that when we're doing a retrofit project, no matter of the scale, it's going to be really important to make sure that whatever is being installed, that consideration is being taken forward. Because if people can't see the benefits of having a certain system in place, and if they then can't have the ability to control that system, it's going to be really, really challenging. So, for example, if you have, say, for example, an air source heat pump, a lot of the manufacturers will now utilize an app for the controls rather than the device on the wall. There are still capabilities of you being able to press buttons on the wall, but if it is designed more to use an app on a smartphone and you don't have that smartphone, you don't have that access to that app, there's going to be a real challenge. So understanding people is really going to be essential here. So some of the key issues that we find when we're thinking about retrofit is that it's about communication. It's always about how do we talk to people? How do we engage people? What's the language we use? What are the methods that we use here? It can also be around isolation. So we will know that there will be vulnerable people in our communities, We will know people close to us who, in our neighbourhoods where we live, who might be considered vulnerable in terms of their ability to access online. And also thinking about that divide. There will be a divide in communities that you work with or are going to work with around the ability to get online, around the skills, the capability. And so making sure that any plan for any retrofit project, regardless of whether it's one property or it's, a whole estate, it's making sure that people have the ability to get the essential information that they need to make those informed choices. That access is going to be really important. So despite 96% of households having some level of internet access, digital poverty is still an issue. And it really highlights that getting everyone online is not going to be enough in terms of this. So thinking about those different services that exist, thinking about the different platforms, what technology is involved. Online safety is really important. So things like making sure people have things password protected. That's a really important part of the learning process. Understanding about cybersecurity, so not sharing details, having a secure Wi-Fi connection, making sure that there will be things like phishing emails where people are trying to get you to access information. It's all part of that wider education piece on that. Making sure that it is an inclusive approach as well, thinking about anyone with a protected characteristic, thinking about the communities that you work in, neighbours are included in that, colleagues, making sure that it is clear and transparent and easy to understand. And also thinking about privacy as well, making sure people can feel safe and that they won't be exposed to things that they don't necessarily want to. When we're thinking about that support element, it's about, how can people have a go-to person? So looking back at the data, almost a fifth of those who reported that they'd not gone online stated that they wanted to but didn't know where to get help. And that signposting is really important in terms of what to consider. So it might be that you work for a local agency and you can signpost to the support services there. It might be around you getting individual help from a local college, for example, whatever it might be. It's thinking, okay, where could that support come from? So it's understanding about the support available, trying to work on how that support can be accessible to that, and thinking about lifestyles as well. Everyone on this call will have a different lifestyle that they choose to kind of run through in their lives, different working hours, different habits. We're all individuals, and that's what makes us, really great people to kind of work with. But it's understanding that in the context of digital. Any approach to digital support must absolutely be inclusive, particularly with people who have differing life experiences, as well as thinking about the methodology there. So thinking, is this going to be a formal method, or what informal approaches can there be? It might be that you can link in with local educational facilities, finding organisations to work with, or it might be asking your work in terms of training opportunities. So lots and lots of opportunities, but things to be very mindful of when we're developing any particular work. So moving on, when we're thinking about retrofit in particular, we're thinking about how does the issue of digital really fit into this, and how should we be thinking about it in the context of retrofit? So if we start at the kind of the beginning, before we do anything, we need to make sure that anyone who's going to be involved in our retrofit project has the skills. So we're starting to understand about, what are some of those skills. So this is why we do masterclasses like this. We have that online ability to be able to get that, but we also make sure that we provide them as a PDF afterwards so that you can share those as a different document. Even you can print them out if you really wanted to. And therefore, it might be that there are certain colleagues that would find benefit from having it printed out. So thinking about even how just this masterclass can help in that's going to be really important. Understanding the information and the information that is available, it's really important here. We often say quite kind of often in kind of general conversation about just Googling it or putting it into a kind of search engine to just have a look what that means. If you are online, that ability really doesn't exist. So it's kind of thinking, who can we go to that's a trusted source? Who is going to be that person that we can link into? It might be linking in with local libraries, for example, or neighbours as a trusted source. It can come in a whole wide range of different packages. When we're thinking wider, we're thinking kind of organisational levels. We can be thinking about what tenant support is available or resident support is available. Again, it might be that there are opportunities within local authorities to have a look at that, and thinking about it in terms of different events that are put on, different sessions and community elements that can be linked in, no matter where you are in that retrofit journey. And also including that kind of digital software confidence, getting that exposure to be able to do that. You might be assigned to be a project manager for your project. It might be you're doing your own house. It might be you are doing a block of 10. You might be doing a whole estate. Thinking about actually, okay, what skills do I need to really elevate my digital understanding as part of this retrofit project? When we think about digital, there's a whole number of ways that this fits in with retrofit. The image you can see is a smart meter. And again, this is one of the ways that we have seen, particularly with energy and kind of energy consumption, that technology is kind of supporting that change from going to have to read what the numbers say on your meter. So understanding if that is something that already exists in that person's house, meaning that actually they're going to have some sort of connectivity for that meter reading to go back to the supplier. If they don't then have a smart meter, that can be a real opportunity to explore the reasons why they haven't got that, why they haven't kind of explored that option. And listening and understanding is going to be really part of that. So thinking about where it really fits in, there's a whole number of different things. We can think about large-scale projects that might have lots of paperwork, that will have plans and designs and retrofit assessments. If that's held on a portal, can everyone on that team be able to access that? Do they have the actual abilities? But also when you are, say, an owner-occupier, do you have the ability to access the information that you need that you might be being sent by contractors or suppliers? It fits in throughout the journey, from that kind of initial exploration into what retrofit projects could we do, to the very kind of handover, that year, kind of the 12-month look back on how the project has been kind of acted. All of those elements come. So throughout that customer journey, and if you've been to any of our resident engagement sessions before, we talk about the customer journey a lot in terms of making sure that it's not just something that happens during construction and after. It's a long process where key elements are included. So really thinking about that customer journey is going to be really, really important for everyone involved, not just the tenant or the resident, but also anyone who is going to be involved in that process. So the planning stage is going to be really important. So when we're thinking about the retrofit project, we might want to be decarbonising our heat. We might want to be doing a whole house retrofit project where we're really significantly improving the fabric of the construction. And what we want to do is kind of think, okay, well, actually, what tools are available to us? What data, and how can we possibly do that? So thinking about the benefits of using technology, of data, of using that online world and that online kind of source of information is going to be really important. So some of the things we'd like to highlight are around thinking about how you could create a baseline for comparison to see how energy consumption is changing. We know we have different seasonality in our consumption. So we have a heating season generally over the kind of winter months. And at the moment in June, we're not in that heating season at the moment. So understanding how that data is going to fit in. Thinking about the specifications that we might have, being able to analyse which is going to be best. Thinking about the efficiencies in that planning process. And what we mean by this is thinking about key milestones that might exist, thinking about what key moments are going to be important in that. So there might be certain dates to kind of get core bits of information over to a contractor. It might be around notifying neighbours. It might be around making design choices. So we've supported organisations who have done kind of large high-rise projects, and there have been choices on the colour of the render that's got on the external wall insulation, for example. So things like that. At what point do things need to be decided? And building in efficiencies to that. Also, we really need to think about the communication. How is that going to come out? Matt, who's on the call today, and I did some work last year. We did a community event and we sent out some surveys via text message, and we held an in-person event as well. And at the in-person event, it was really interesting that quite a few of the people who came talked to us about actually they had received a text message, but they didn't trust it. They didn't trust what they were being taken to in terms of the link. So that was a really interesting learning moment in thinking, okay, well, the terminology and the language of that communication needed to be reframed in order for people to understand that it was a legitimate text message, that it was a legitimate survey link that they had been said, and therefore that it was safe for them to open and respond to. So that was a really interesting learning point for us in terms of communication and how to be able to do that. When we think about retrofit planning as well, we're also thinking about how software can really help us as long as it's used appropriately, and making sure that everyone who is utilising that is able to use their skills to use that software to the best of their ability. So if you have a large project in particular, there might be project management tools that you're going to be utilising there to kind of get that progress. When we're thinking of the design, so the detail of that retrofit project, so what are we doing? That's the detail of it. It's understanding the design calculations. So understanding that quantities are going to be really important here. There might be particular design software that might be used to support that particular program. Also, there might be a useful opportunity to identify anomalies in this. So Matt and I have worked on lots of projects together in terms of looking at data in particular, and where data can sometimes be corrupted. We had one project where it said that this house already had a wind turbine, but it was in a city centre, and so we knew it definitely didn't have a wind turbine, but the data said it did. So that importance of checking and understanding is really going to be important. So understanding about design quantities is going to be really important. Quality is absolutely linked into that. That design piece and understanding how we can have that communication, and really thinking about different kind of options, particularly when we're talking about kind of solar. So if solar panels are part of your regime, it's really important in understanding what that means and what it can mean for your project. Excuse me. Coming back to the customer journey, when we're thinking about it, so we've planned it, we've designed it, it's going ahead, it's gone ahead, it's been a successful install. It's been a successful install. It's then thinking about, okay, well, actually, what happens after that? So that handover piece, the information of people, how is that going to play a part? And understanding that the customer of whatever level that is, so 1, to 100, 1,000, whatever it is in your project, what is that customer use of systems? What does the digital system look like? Is it that there is an app? Is it that there is a controller? What are all of the things that have been installed and how can they be supported? Thinking about from an evaluation point of view, looking back in terms of the baseline versus the kind of what has actually been done is really important. And where does that data come from? Can it be captured? So I know a lot of organisations use monitoring systems. So we'll check things like temperature and consumption. How is that going to work for that property if they are offline? So really thinking about all of the details, pulling together that information. As well as, importantly, with any project, thinking about the commissioning stage, thinking about any warranties that exist. Where is that warranty guarantee going to be held? And we know it happens sometimes, but defects and problems. How is all of that going to be fed through and developed? And then we're thinking about customer support in terms of how that is going to look for your customers. Is that going to be an online system where they need to log in? Is it a telephone number? Is it going to be in-person support? Again, understanding the vulnerabilities of potentially of some of the customers who've had things installed and the residents, but also understanding people's preference. What are they going to prefer? Would they like an email? Would they like a text message? Would they like a hard copy through the post? So really understanding how all of that fits in, particularly for those who are offline and don't have the ability to access certain things by certain measures. So let's have a look at some examples of where offline residents have been clearly highlighted as a challenge to any kind of project, and what some people have done to kind of try and combat that. So this is for kind of rural projects in particular. This was a kind of quite a rural setting where there were a lot of offline residents for this particular project. It was a challenge because it was identified that many were actually low wage as well. So if you remember, we touched on that issue around cost of the internet in particular. A lot were already off gas. So again, when we're thinking about the retrofit solutions, thinking about how that might be an opportunity, but also about thinking about what's going to be an appropriate different heating fuel source for those residents. A lot of the properties were what is kind of known as kind of hard to treat. So a lot of not typical traditional build. And also the challenge here was it was a very dispersed population of properties and people. So understanding, okay, well, this is our challenge. Everyone's spread out of a large area. We've got lots of low wages. We're very rural. How can we possibly do this? And what this particular organisation did is that they converted a bus. I don't think it was a bright red bus like this, but this is just an example of their bus to basically go round the locations, and as many as they could, to access the small villages, to spread the news of the forthcoming retrofit projects that were going to take place. They also looked at accessing local venues that were already known to people in those areas. So things like village halls were utilised to host community events. Also linking in with local level kind of contacts, so particularly parish and ward councillors to really kind of be on board. So again, that trusted source that is offline is a person. Spreading that information about the retrofit projects that were going to be undertaken. And this was really well received. In the bus, they had examples of what the retrofit project looked like. So insulation levels, different pieces of kit were in there as well, so that people could physically go and see it. They didn't have to go to the library to kind of log on. It was a very kind of physical, face-to-face approach that this organisation took. So that's just one example that actually captures a number of issues when we're talking about retrofit. But for our focus today, it was because they were offline residents. That was the focus of this. They wanted to make sure that the message got out, and so deployed this fantastic bus to go and have a look, talk to people, enable that engagement piece to facilitate support and understanding for what that retrofit project involved. We also have other examples throughout the sector around, okay, thinking what can we do differently? And so not just kind of what we might consider kind of older people, but there's also digital divide affecting lots of young people as well. So if we look at kind of national statistics, kind of 13 to 19 million people over the age of 16 are estimated to be in digital poverty. So that's, massive section. And what this organisation did was worked on volunteers, and they set up workshops and drop-in sessions, again, like the last example, at community spaces to educate people in digital skills and the internet. And community spaces, I think, are going to be really important for a lot of organisations as a way of getting people into a trusted space to address particular issues. So again, religious facilities were used, other public venues were used, to really kind of get people skilled up in terms of that, talk through digital exclusion, and really kind of working through opportunities to get people to be able to access in whatever that means. And that might have meant that there was a physical computer that they could go to access, not necessarily in their own home, but could go and access and get that information. This project undertook over 280 hours of education to help local people, which is absolutely fantastic. And some of the real positives are around confidence, access, and gaining digital skills to support them in their retrofit journey, but also in their place of work. So when we're thinking about kind of next steps, really thinking about addressing digital poverty as something that is going to be really important in your retrofit journey. Understanding that it needs to be considered, thinking about people, and it's people first. We're doing retrofit because we want to improve the home. Homes are really important to people, and regardless of what your scheme is, it will be about making sure that everyone who's involved in that process is aware of how, if there is a digital divide, that can have a big impact on the project. Thinking about what that level of connectivity is. So it might be that actually they are fully kind of accessible. They have smartphones, they have Wi-Fi, they have a laptop, but don't know how to use it. It might be that there's a complete absence of internet in the home, but they have access somewhere else. So really understanding all of the different elements that might come into play. Specifically thinking about your retrofit project, what is it that you want to do, and how will digital connectivity be able to be a factor, an important part within that? Thinking about what solutions there are. This might be additional training, it might be support, it might be thinking about different solutions, understanding how you can be part of that and supporting that retrofit project. And then if you have a resident engagement plan, so that is part of your kind of wider project plan, how is digital going to figure in that? Is it going to be that actually it will be something that is available online? Are there going to be options for people to be able to access it, to see a hard copy, to request it down the telephone? All of those kind of issues are really important, and making sure that it is suitable and relevant to your project that you are running. As always, we like to share opportunities with you. So as Matt said at the beginning, these slides will be available to you in an email. They are also available online. If you do need any different comments on that, we have the rise@turntown.co.uk email address. So if there are any accessibility challenges you have, please do let us know, and we will endeavour to find solutions to that. But with all of the RISE support, there are different masterclasses, podcasts. You can utilise the website and click on those, share them with colleagues. People can listen in live as well. They're all available on the riseretrofit.org.uk website, and you're all very welcome to access that. If you do have any particular queries or comments, do email us. Really, really fantastic.